to the Renegade Lifestyle Podcast with me, George Papp, seeking to empower you with practical strategies and information to exit the matrix and become ungovernable. Today, we are joined by Jason Crowe, one of the co-founders of the Qortal project, which is building the decentralized internet. Thanks for coming on, Jason. I took a look at some of your work on Qortal about 2-3 years ago. It feels like yesterday when I sort of first heard about you guys. It's already been 2 or 3 years, so it's a pleasure to have you on. I heard a lot about the project, although I haven't done a deep dive. That's why you're on, and it'll be a great sort of information piece for our viewers and listeners here as well today. So how are you? Thanks again for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad you found us. Whether you found us forever ago or right now, it's good that you did. I'm really excited right now for the project. We are to the phase where I feel we're launching basically the primary functionality of the platform, and this is actually happening within the next few days. So you caught me at a great time as far as the project goes. To start getting this information out there a little bit further. And I'm going to start, trying to reach out a little bit more to some more people as soon as this does take place. This is like the main thing I've been waiting for to really start pushing harder, right? So, we have been working a long time on this platform. We have done essentially everything differently. We made sure that we followed the original ideals of what blockchain was supposed to do, right? And our project is meant to get more decentralized over time, not less, right? And we've seen with things like Bitcoin and basically every other crypto, they get more centralized as time goes on in multiple different ways. The mining power itself, mining pools, centralized service providers, because they can't do things like cross-chain trades like Qortal can. So we wanted to eliminate all of those concerns and at the same time also provide an actual infrastructure replacement to replace things like the internet and basically every application you use on top of it, right? And this weekend, when we launch what we're calling Q apps functionality, we will actually be able to start rebuilding every application that you use on the internet, right? So it's a really, really cool thing. We already have, web hosting capability. This is all done with no server, no continual fees, no domain fees, nothing like that, right? So it's actually able to publish a presence that stays there indefinitely, gets more redundant, more anonymous, more secure as time goes on. It's an absolutely incredible platform. And now we will be able to do the same thing with applications. So, and we're launching Q apps along with the first 2 demos, which will be Q blog and Q tube. So we will have basically a completely re-envisioned idea of what a blog is, where you'll be able to not only publish a typical blog-like post, but you'll be able to use a drag and drop builder to build a whole web presence with Qblog. So it is really, really cool, and I am very excited about it. If you'd like, I can show some, share my screen and do
I think that would be great to share your screen and have a look.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This computer, I don't have my node fully synchronized right now, but I can show what the Qortal UI looks like and what we have available right now, if you'd like, or you can ask some other questions and I can answer those, and we can do either or both.
I guess we can do maybe at the same time. I don't know how much concentration you'll need, but I think with regards to Qortal, for people who have sort of maybe not even understood or even know what it is, so we're basically seeing here a decentralized project which will build, I guess, an alternative to all of the, I guess, apps that we currently use, like you mentioned, the internet itself. I mean, how can you decentralize the internet itself if you rely on the, let's say, third-party providers, for example? I know this is quite a left field question,
No,
so
it's
early
not. I
on.
mean,
But yeah.
it's a logical question because it is part of our roadmap, right? So, yeah, we right now the only thing we really use the internet for is just to connect one node to the next, right? And so we've built Qortal in such a way that we can replace that connection method with any other connection method, and everything else on Qortal will work just fine. That's why we don't allow people to link out from Qortal websites to the internet. We do have the ability to have what's called a gateway node that goes from the internet to stuff that's hosted on Qortal. So you can do it that way, but we don't allow people to go the other way because we're looking to eventually separate ourselves from the internet entirely, right? So the idea at first is to establish the network, get as many nodes as we can worldwide, right? Then we are now talking about mesh networking, right? So mesh networking will allow you to, instead of using the internet to connect to nodes, you can replace that connection to the internet and just connect directly to nodes, right? So mesh networking allows you to use any sort of wireless communications and broadcast out a signal just like you do with your home router, right? And instead of having a router with a bunch of machines connected to it, it connects directly to another node, right? And establishes a network that way. So it's reliant upon both the reach of the wireless, right? And how many nodes are nearby as far as how strong your connection is going to be to the network. That's why we need to have more nodes before we really start doing that. However, we are looking into starting it as soon as possible. I have found a piece of software that is built literally ideal. And I am extremely surprised that this existed because we've basically had to build everything else from scratch ourselves, right? I expected it to be no different with the mesh networking protocol and so forth, but I actually found some software with the assistance of some community members to help point it out to me that is exactly what I would have wanted to build. It is a completely new communications protocol, so it replaces the need for IP addresses and it utilizes any type of wireless connectivity that you have, from anything like normal wireless to Bluetooth to things like ham radio and so forth. That technology is amazing, right? So I would like to have Qortal connect over that technology, and I'm right now looking at getting in touch with that technology's developer so that they could potentially show me how to do this, so I don't have to figure it out myself. It would be much quicker that way, right? Then the idea is to have a guide on how to set that up and how to have Qortal connect over that, and people can start building the mesh network now, even before we build that directly into Qortal as a primary connection method, right? So it'll allow us to start establishing mesh networks in pockets in different places. And the way I see this really working is initially it will be mesh networks in a bunch of different locations. Like, say there are 10 people here nearby that I can connect to with regular wireless, right? Then those 10 people, we have 6 internet connections between us that we share, and we make a gateway to the internet. So we use our mesh, and we also make use of those internet gateways. So this will also do something else as like a side effect that's pretty cool. So instead of those 10 people having to have each an internet connection, now 10 people have 6 redundant internet connections, right? So I've thought about some other ideas that can go along with that to help establish this, but it's a pretty cool thing, right? So you don't have to rely upon just your own connection and worry about that. You'll have 6 on your mesh that will give you a gateway to the rest of the network, right? So once mesh start expanding, getting bigger, then they'll be able to connect directly to each other, and we won't need the internet at all. In the beginning, we'll have to have a bridge that gets to the internet to get to the rest of the network. Then eventually the mesh will expand and we won't need the internet anymore, right? I've also found someone who has a technology that they have built that's some hardware that is apparently, with a little bit more voltage dedicated to it, they say they can get a signal to space. Now, if they can get a signal to space, then I see no reason why that signal couldn't go across oceans and so forth. So I'm looking into that to see if we could potentially have some sort of arrangement there where I can send them a protector, they can send me one of those, and I can start messing with that. But that's a little bit like further down the line. Right now, we are focused on the Q apps functionality so that we can start building applications, and Q blog, which will people don't really seem to realize, but a blog is basically every platform that's a social media platform in the world. They're all essentially blogs at the base level, right? They allow you to make posts. Some of them have other things like, a chat or whatever. They allow you to make comments on those posts and so forth. So it's literally most all social media platforms are blogs at the base level. And now Qblog is going to take it a step further and have even more functionality and allow you to build basically your entire web presence with Qblog. We have a drag and drop builder that's going to get launched immediately with it. The only thing that won't come out right at the first version, but it'll take maybe a week or so after that, which isn't very long, right? We will not have comments initially, right? So we will have the ability to make posts with audio, video, text, everything that you could possibly want on a post or a website, whatever. With the audio and video, something that's really cool, it's got a built-in player. You can watch a video down in the corner as you're browsing other things. You can have a whole list of audio that gets played as a playlist, has a built-in player at the bottom. It's really cool, right? So, and that's just one potential concept for a Q app, right? We also will have the ability to do merchant sites, marketplaces, and supporting payments for all of these supported coins of Qortal. Now, this is another thing that's different with Qortal, right? It's not just a single coin, right? It has its own coin because that's what you get rewarded with for minting and helping expanding the network. It's utilized for name registration, utilized in the back end for the things like cross-chain trading and so forth. It has all the technologies that the other coins don't have. So it's necessary in multiple ways, but it's not the only coin of the platform. Qortal is an ecosystem. It's an entire infrastructure. It's not just a single coin. So there's a lot of things that we have done at the base level to ensure that our blockchain is completely different and has a whole plethora more functionality than simply just, an economic thing like a coin, right? So yeah, we have done a whole lot to ensure that we can decentralize the world, right? That's the whole goal. Like, we want everything that has a middleman now, that doesn't need to have a middleman, to not have a middleman anymore, right? And I can share my screen. I'm going to kind of show
Yeah,
you.
definitely share your screen. Definitely share the
Yeah.
screen, and you can talk through that. I'm gonna bring up something else in regards to like a question for the project itself. How easy is it to use right now, and what's ready right now, and how many users are using it right now? How really active are the community at the moment?
Yeah, so we have it's hard to estimate exactly how many users and how many nodes and so forth, but
Yeah,
I can show you something here. Let me get off of this so it's not like all weird looking. Okay, so this explorer, we have multiple different explorers, which are just applications that help you get data from the chain and so forth, right? We have this one here, and this one gives. So this one, the way that that it counts this number here is so it shows us 10,000. So this is estimating that we have at least 10,000 nodes on the network right now. This number here is the active. So these people are actually active right now. These are the minting accounts that are online and submitting minting signatures at this very moment, right? So there are 5,788 minters that are submitting signatures right now. This is counted 10,000 nodes. And the way that this counts this is it takes every IP address, right, that connects, that it can find, and it removes duplicates, and it removes IP addresses that haven't been the same for longer than 7 days, right? So in reality, the number is actually a lot higher than this. This is like a base number that is probably about 1/3 or 1/4 of the actual number of nodes, because the
yeah,
majority of our users, once they realize how awesome this is, they have at least two, if not more, nodes running so that they can have redundancy for their minting account and multiple other reasons, right? They can have one set up as a data supernode or whatever, right? So multiple people in the community, almost everyone runs more than one node, right? So we can probably say that this number is about 1/3 or 1/4 of the total number of nodes on the network. But even if you just say, okay, this is the actual number, right? If you say that, we are still larger than almost every other blockchain based on full nodes, right? And if you know anything about how blockchains work, full nodes are extremely important, right? The number of full nodes on your network is directly correlated to the number of copies of the database that exist. It makes a stronger, more decentralized network the more number of full nodes you have, right? So this is an absolutely huge number compared to almost every other blockchain. I forget exactly what the number is, but Litecoin, if I remember correctly, has somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000 full nodes, right? And Litecoin has been around since right after the launch of Bitcoin, right? So we are actually larger than Litecoin after, just being live for 3 years, right? So it shows that our methodology behind getting people to run full nodes in order to be a minter and help us expand the network in the correct fashion and establish it with a number of full nodes that needs to be larger is working, right? So here, I'll show you what the Qortal UI currently looks like. So our platform, as I said, completely unique. It is different than any other crypto project you have ever seen before. In fact, I don't even really like to call it a crypto project just because most most of the other ones that I see out there, I don't like, right? There's something that has been done like an ICO or having a company on top of it, or so much focus on just being a coin, even if their platform is supposedly capable of other things. Now, no one has anything like what Qortal does, right? So this is the login for the Qortal UI. Now, this is just what the Qortal UI looks like before you log in or create your accounts. The account creation process, I don't know if you'd like me to go through that, but it's extremely simple. I can go through it real quick just to show you. This is the account creation process, right? It just says, welcome to Qortal. You can click this here, this word seed phrase, if you would like to see the seed phrase, but we do things a little bit differently in Qortal, and we do not show the seed phrase by default. Now, this is done for a reason, like everything else. Most of the time, if you get a seed phrase shown to you, now a seed phrase can be directly used to access your account, right? So if you don't save that seed phrase, preferably off of the computer, and keep track of it that way, right? You could potentially give someone access to your account by accidentally showing this on the screen, or giving access to a file that you've saved it in. So we have removed that security vulnerability. We allow people to do it. So if you click this, it will display the seed phrase on the screen, right? But we suggest, unless you really know what you're doing, just go ahead and skip that. You can just click next. And what we're doing instead is we're going to give you an encrypted, with this password here that you create, backup file that you can save anywhere, and you don't have to worry about it because it's encrypted, right? So without the backup file and the password that you create, there's nothing that anyone can do with your account, right? And since you are dealing with a decentralized system, you are the only one who has this account, right? So this name here is just a display name. You can use this for keeping track of your accounts. So you can have as many accounts as you like, right? You don't have to just have one. The only account type that is currently limited is a minting account. So we ask that everyone has only one minting account per person, and we limit that by way of having minters who are already level 5 or higher be the ones who basically invite new minters into the system by giving them a key to get started, right? So that is the only account type that is limited. You can have as many other accounts as you like. So this is a display name. You can give it whatever you want. So say like my work account or whatever, right? Then you give it a password. Repeat the password. and click create accounts. This here is the backup file I was just talking about. It will pop up automatically, and the default location to save it is downloads. So if you want to change that location, you can. Now, this is a Mac, so it looks a little bit different, but it's going to be exactly the same concept on any operating system that you use. Go ahead and just click save for that if you don't mind saving in the downloads, or move it to wherever you'd like. Now, what you're going to want to do also is go and find that file here and copy it to as many other locations as you can, right? So if you don't save that file in multiple locations and something happens to the computer that you created it on, then you will lose access to your account, and there's no one who can do anything about that for you, right? We are forcing everyone to take control of their own digital lives, and having that full control means also having responsibility over managing your accounts, right? So
Yes,
once you
exactly.
save
That's
that,
the decentralized
right.
versus
So there's
centralized
no forgot your
difference.
password,
Can't call the
message us
support line.
here thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And once you've done that, you're good. Now you are into your Qortal account. So as you can see, creating accounts, extremely straightforward. We actually did some testing on this account creation methodology at a music festival with people walking around, drinking, having a good time, handed them a phone with the UI on it and said, create an account, please. So that's how we
That's a
made
good
it as
test.
simple as possible. So it is very straightforward to create an account, right? And the first tab that it's taking you to when you first get in is wallets, right? And notice it doesn't say just wallet with no plural, because we have multiple, right? So you've got your Qort wallet, which is Qortal, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Digibyte, Ravencoin, and Pirate Chain. Now, if you know anything about Pirate Chain is what's referred to as a completely anonymous coin. There is no way that you can track any transactions on the Pirate chain. So we have the entry point here for people who are super focused on privacy. If you come in with some pirate, some R, right, and you trade that on the trade portal for quartz, then you are going to have a completely anonymous way to obtain Qort, right? So that is something that people focused on privacy
What's
really like.
what's the
And
privacy like? What's the privacy in general on the protocol itself?
okay,
How
so
does that
we
work?
are a transparent chain, right? But since we are completely decentralized and there is no centralized service involved in any aspect of anything, there is no way to tie an identity to an address, right? So this address here that I created, if I went into QChat and I said hello, people would think I was someone new. There's no way to know that this is me, right? Unless I literally tell you and prove it to you somehow, right? So since it's
How
completely
does the
decentralized,
how
go
does the
ahead.
IP address how does the IP address not pick up from Qortal? So how does that work? Where they
Okay,
can't
so
pick up your IP?
yeah, so the IP address is literally just connecting to other Qortal nodes. There's no tie between the IP address and anything else, right? So it's just connecting to the network and synchronizing and so forth. There's no way to connect the IP address to an account. If you are concerned about, not wanting to have your IP address shown at all on the network, you can connect over Tor or I2P or a VPN, right? But there's really no reason to do that. We are going to add more anonymity features to both the way that the connection happens on the back end and also the way that transactions are submitted, so that even if they try to trace like where the transaction came from, as far as if they have a node with thousands of connections and they can see that it came from this one or whatever, we will be able to prevent that from taking place too, right? So in the very near future, we will be looking at doing what's called dandelions, so that when you submit a transaction, it doesn't get submitted from your node, it gets submitted from another node that you're connected to, or one randomly connected to that one, right? So there's no way to then tie a transaction to a specific node, right? So that kind of thing, yes, I guess it's technically possible to figure out a transaction that was submitted and which node it was originated on. So if you're concerned about that, then at this very moment, yeah, you could use a VPN or whatever to connect to the network. But as far as connecting identity to accounts, it isn't possible. there's no way to connect an identity to any transaction taking place on the network, especially if you are trading with Pirate Chain and so forth. But even if you trade with Litecoin, right? Even if you buy that Litecoin on Coinbase and they know that you bought the Litecoin and then you send it out to your Qortal Litecoin address. So you come here, you copy this address here, and you send it from Coinbase to here. Then you use the trade portal to trade for Qort. There is no way to tie from that point an identity to that address at all anymore, right? Because they just that loses its ability to be identified at that point, right? So really, we're breaking people away from the ability to have all of their stuff identified from these centralized services, right? Once that trade takes place, there's no way to correlate the two anymore, and there's no tie between this address here and this address here within Qortal. So once a trade takes place, it's now officially back to being not able to be tracked anymore, right? So it's going to get more anonymous and more unable to be tracked in the future, right? But we have not focused fully on that because it's really anonymous as it is, right? And we will be adding encryption on the connection. And when we get what I was talking about with the mesh networking, that protocol, that does encryption by default as well and removes the need for IP addresses when you're doing a mesh connection, right? So we will be moving away completely from the internet overall, right? So there will be no more IP addresses at all in the future. So you have your wallets here. These are all local, right? So you are the only one that controls these. You can come in here and export the private key for any of these wallets individually if you like, or just managing your single Qortal wallet backup file manages all of these wallets for you, right? That's another thing that is really cool, I think, because in the past, I've dealt with countless different coins, right? And always having to keep track of installing software for each one of them and keeping track of the backup for each one of them becomes really difficult, right? And this makes it very simple. You have a single backup file and you have an address for each coin tied to that one single backup file. Makes your life a lot easier. And me personally, I have said that I am no longer going to hold any coin that isn't supported by Qortal. So it makes my life easier. I don't have to worry about having all these different backups in different locations anymore, right? So yeah, any questions on this so far?
I want to ask actually a question about how the project is kind of moving in a way where it wants to obviously completely decentralize from the current internet. I wanted to ask how many people do you see users wise coming onto this with regards to the mainstream? Because I see I see like an alternative, a parallel society, let's say, where okay, there'll be people who are using stuff like Qortal, but there'll be people who will be completely unaware that there's any even decentralization. Basically, how easy is it to move users that maybe like are used to such a centralized system, which is easy to use, which I'm sure Qortal is easy to use, but they're scared of moving because they're so stuck in habit, for example. How easy is it for someone of a very low knowledge base on this kind of stuff to be able to use it?
Okay, so that is one thing that we are really improving this weekend when along with the launch of Q apps, right? So what it has been so far, in order to launch the Qortal Core on Mac and things like that, you have to use the terminal. On Mac and Linux, you have to use the terminal, go like this, and start, right? This one up here in the corner. That's the UI is essentially a browser, right? So if you go to the websites here, you can actually, yes. So the UI is essentially a browser. In the future, yes, I can envision a Qortal, a QDN browser. So you could just use that instead. We are also, when QApps goes live, the UI will have an option to minimize the sidebar here. So you'll be able to totally use it exactly like a browser. You've got your address up here, you've got back and forward and home and all that, right? You can minimize this over to the side and it'll just be the little icons by themselves. Then if you mouse over it, it'll pop up again. So it itself is a browser, right? And the whole idea behind the UI and being able to access everything this way is that you're not reliant upon anything that then has access to the internet, right? So if you're using a browser and you're accessing this stuff through a typical browser, you could also then access things on the internet, and there could be potential security risks involved with that, right? So the whole idea behind using it directly in the UI is that everything you access this way is all on QDN and all completely decentralized, right? So what we're doing with the launch, right? Yep. The only reason I have this Mac is so that I can demo certain things on how to
No,
install
sure,
on
man.
Mac.
I use Windows still. I'm still in the
Yeah.
process of like creating everything in a proper decentralized way. So that's one of the next steps is to actually de-Windows this computer or potentially get something new.
So speaking of that, my company, you can go to Crowetic.com. We build open source devices called the Cortector, right? Now this is based on a Raspberry Pi 4. It's a palm-sized device built to run a Qortal node. I have also started doing a couple different services. One of them is rebuilding and selling laptops, customizing them, removing all the nonsense in the BIOS like Intel Management Engine and all the other stuff, CompuTrace and all the stuff that can track you, installing Linux, configuring it so that it looks and feels exactly like Windows or exactly like Mac or as close as possible as I can make it, right? With two separate desktop environments people can choose, already pre-configured to run Qortal and so forth. So if you're interested in that, there is this option here. I'm about to list about 6 more of these laptops here today. I also have the upgrade service where you can send me your laptop. Right now, I'm only doing laptops because they're easier to ship. In the future, I could potentially offer others as well, but you can send me your computer and I will do what I do to the rebuilt machines to yours and send it back. So just if you're interested, right? Everything that we do is open source. I have guides on exactly how to set the stuff up the same way that I do. So if you'd like to do it yourself, that's totally possible. We also offer full guides on how to build these things, full guides on how to build these. We give you the 3D printer file if you want to, right? So we do everything in the same ideals as Qortal itself. But Crowetic hardware development, if you would like to purchase a node that's pre-set up, ready to go, you can do that from my company's website there. Just
Yeah, I mean that's excellent. I'll probably end up doing that myself.
Yeah, I mean the
So
machines are really nice, man. I spend individual time on each one to make sure that they're configured perfectly and that they're going to work exactly the way that I want them to. So, but yeah, this is essentially the browser of Qortal, right? So everything here in the websites plugin, you can see the available websites on Qortal right here. There are multiple pages of them available, right? These are all published by community members. It takes a minute sometimes to load the avatar on all of them. Some of them don't have avatars, but you can see all of the sites available here. So any new site that gets listed will show up in this list in alphabetical order. The same thing will show up for QApps. So instead of it showing just websites here on the left, it's going to say QDN and a drop down like that, and it'll have websites and Q apps under it, right? So Q apps will show up exactly like this, but they will have a download button. So instead of having to wait for the site to load the first time when you click it, you'll just have a download button. It'll say when it's complete, and then you'll access that Q app and it'll load just like the site that I showed you there that loaded immediately because I had already
this
accessed it.
is, I mean, this is excellent for that censorship resistance, which
Right.
we've
It is
seen.
impossible, not resistant. It is impossible to censor anything.
Censorship,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
It is censorship proof.
it's so proof, yeah. It's important and really important to have this, I think, because we've seen the last 3 years just full on just blocking and removing content. I recently had some content removed from YouTube, and I just think that having an option off the current centralized system, whilst even if you guys are on, having websites or having some kind of social media presence or whatever, or any sort of apps now, I guess, and channels, you can
Yep.
move that onto Qortal as an option to be censorship resistant. I know there's channels like there's platforms like Odysee and Rumble which allow that. They are centralized. Well, I don't know about Odysee actually. I think library was a blockchain based. I think it is still library, but anyway, this is a
Yeah.
library. I think basically an option to move on to something that is decentralized and be censorship resistant or censorship proofed is definitely something you need to do. I've done it. Jason, thanks for adding me onto the Qortal network as well. So I think that's something that we should really promote to get people onto this.
Yes, so I wanted to show you this too. So the same site that I accessed there in the Qortal UI, you can see I
Yeah,
can access from the internet too. So this is over a public gateway that I set up called Qortal.link. Now, Qortal.link will allow access to any registered name. So if I didn't put that one and I put mine instead, it would bring up that site, right? So you can access everything that's hosted on Qortal through this gateway. You can also do what's called a private gateway, and say you had your own domain and you wanted it to be able to be accessible from the internet, hosted it on Qortal, then you just set up a private gateway, very simple to do, just a couple settings in the Qortal core, that's it. And you can access it just like this from the internet, and it looks and functions just the same, right? So this is definitely possible too. So we can have access from the internet without people having to run a Qortal node. But obviously, if you're running a Qortal node and accessing it through the UI, that is the decentralized way to access it, right? So it is a different idea as far as, so a lot of the other blockchain based services, they will have the some of the data on the blockchain, but a lot of the stuff is still done on the interface and so forth, which is published on a regular web server and so forth, right? So you're still dealing with the issue of, if that domain has any issues at all,
yeah,
people won't be able to use it, right? If my Qortal.link gateway has any issues at all, it doesn't matter because people can still access it through Qortal, right? Or
yeah.
through any other public gateway, right? So it's a lot different because the whole thing, everything,
Is
the
yeah.
interface and all of the back end is on the network, right? So it's not like you're dealing with half of the data that's decentralized and half of it that isn't, right? So it's really
Are
important
there
that we note that difference.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, sorry to cut you there, but I
No
mean,
worries.
that's excellent. I mean, is there any points of real, entrance for any malpractice from any kind of outside entity, let's say? Is there any, at the moment, any places where that could happen?
I don't believe so, because you have to treat this as if, I mean, it is what it is, right? It's not us putting everything up here, right? It's just like if you were to try to blame the internet for everything that it gets used for, right? It's not a company that's running Qortal. We didn't publish all of these sites, right? You can go and figure out which name is published. That's it. It's not us, right? Not all of these sites were published by, the Qortal team or whatever, right? And all of our developers are just community members who came in and started helping us develop, right? We do everything in that fashion. So there's no company on top of anything. Crowetic hardware development is just a separate company that is dedicated to building things for Qortal, but it is not on top of Qortal, right? No one owns Qortal. Everyone owns Qortal. It's just like, you can't blame a protocol for what it ultimately gets used for by one potentially negative party, right? That's there's no yeah. If that answers your question, I'm not sure.
I mean, I think it was more of if, like, for example, I guess Bitcoin can be hit with kind of malpractice through the mining system potentially. Like the pooled mining is quite centralized at this point because only huge amounts of capacity is needed to actually be able to mine Bitcoin, and you get all these
Right.
centralized miners. Can you foresee, or is there a way that that can happen here? I mean, I'm definitely speaking in layman's terms right now because I don't understand, but
No, like if you're saying like if a majority of like the power or whatever can be centralized, and no, there is no way to. So for one, there's no way to buy influence on Qortal, right? Every minter only gets influence by continuing to mint. The more time you have submitted minting signatures, you get what's up here called blocks minted. The more blocks minted you have, the more influence you have, the more weight you have when we launch the voting system, which will be determining the future of the platform with presentation or proposals that are put up by community members and voted on by the other community members, right? So you can't buy influence. There's no way to come in and buy a bunch of minting power because that's not a thing. That is why we have the level 5 and higher minters who are the ones who give keys to new minters. It should be people that they know, people that they are familiar with, and they can give them a key, right? They can only issue two at one time, so it can't grow out of control, and it's not able to be manipulated in the same way that Bitcoin is, right? So there's no need to worry about having a massive mining pool that has over 50% of the power that then can do things on the network that are potentially not good, right? So there's nothing like that that's possible. Another security thing that was done is the higher level minter you are, the more likely you are to be the block signer. So in order for someone to do, say, something like a 51% attack, right, it would be basically impossible. They would have to get all of the higher level minters to agree to attack the network, right? So it's very, very, very unlikely. There are no centralized points of failure or anything like that in Qortal at all.
cool, nice one. And I
Yeah,
guess my
that
last
was one of the
question
things we
is,
needed to get rid of, right? Like that's
yeah,
a major issue on most other platforms. Yeah,
it really is. And then you've
yeah,
got proof of stake with Ethereum, which is basically centralized.
right.
I just wanted to ask this question: Why? What was your, I guess, motivation to build this? Because you
Well,
clearly have a big passion on this project, and I can see the benefits. And there's clearly a reason. And I just wanted a kind of that emotional response because I know that there's definitely a deep reasoning for this project.
so there are multiple actually. Since I was very young, I have seen through a lot of what people see as normal, and I look at it and go, wow, that is a total scam. And as I found the blockchain space, I thought, wow, blockchain technology is the future. But then the more I learned and the more I saw, and all of the platforms had one issue or another that trended right back towards centralization. And I got to a point where I started thinking that maybe this was done on purpose. You know what I mean? And so I have also been taken advantage of by basically every centralized service I've ever dealt with, from Bank of America to PayPal to any other service, all centralized exchanges, everything. Almost all of them that I've dealt with have screwed me in one way or another. I've lost over 20 Bitcoin on centralized exchanges, thousands and thousands of dollars in banks and PayPal and so forth, just literally taking money from me for no reason. Saying that I was a drug dealer because I was selling Bitcoin before they knew about it. And it's nonsense, right? So the ability for that kind of stuff to take place needed to be removed. It's just that simple. And so I wanted to see blockchain technology be used to its potential and be used in a way that cannot trend back to being completely controlled again by the people who have more money or more influence or more power, right? So I really was passionate about getting rid of that middleman that's unnecessary and making a system that's actually truly fair and truly honest and truly open and available to anyone. And literally, you can use a tiny little palm sized computer to mint courts. You can't do that on basically any other platform. And with that one tiny device, you can start earning more as you level up. You don't have to worry about adding more hardware. You don't have to worry about buying more coin in the case of proof of work and proof of stake. You just prove yourself over time and you earn your influence in that fashion, right? So the longer you've been a legitimate minter, the higher your level is, the more coin you earn, and the more influence you have in deciding the future of the platform. It's just honest, straightforward, legitimate, right? And that is what I wanted to see. And having a platform like this where everything is in one place, it's easy for the user to use. And the one thing I wanted to comment on earlier when you were talking about ease of use, right? So yes, right now it's a little not as straightforward and when it comes to setting up the Qortal core. The Qortal UI is very, very straightforward. You have a single drag and drop install for Mac, you have a single installer for Windows, and you have a single file that you download for Linux and make it executable and run it. It's very straightforward to run the UI, right? The core is where people have a little bit of issues because on Linux and Mac, it requires a couple commands in the terminal. It's not a big deal, but they don't really use the terminal and then they forget how to start it and things like that, right? So what we're doing this weekend, along with the Q apps initial release and the two first demo Q apps, is we're making the UI fully able to handle everything else for people, right? So you'll only have to install the Qortal UI. It will then check to see if the Qortal core is running, which is the little blue icon up here. If it is, you're fine, right? If it's not, it will then check to see if it's installed. If it's not installed, it will say, would you like to download and install the Qortal core? You say yes, it does it for you, starts it, and you're good. Same thing will happen when you start the UI next time. If the core is not running, it'll say, would you like to start the core? You say yes, you're good, right? So it is going to be very straightforward. It's going to be as simple as installing any other application. Yes, you have to wait for the core to synchronize. That's always going to be a thing if you're running a full node. When we get a little bit further along, we're releasing what is called light nodes. And light nodes allow you to literally just start it and use it. You don't have to worry about synchronizing the chain. You don't have to worry about any of the rest of the stuff that comes along with it. You just connect to existing full nodes on the network, get the data that you need from the chain from them, and that's it. So you'll be able to do everything except for mint, because minting, the whole idea behind that is to run a full node and support the network by running a full node, right? So you can't mint with a light node, but everything else, the trade portal, auto buy, which allows you to put in a buy order on the trade portal to buy court automatically. All of the rest of the stuff, websites, Q apps, everything, Q chat, all of it. It's all available through a light node. So you'll have no need to worry about the chain synchronizing. So this is also going to be great for things like mobile support, right? So we will have mobile support very soon after that. We are getting to the point where it's literally going to be as easy, if not easier, than installing a lot of typical applications, right? So yes, you're always going to have to install something because that's what decentralized is, right? You're not accessing things that are hosted somewhere else. You're accessing things from your own machine. So you're always going to have to install something. But we're going to make that installing something as simple as it can possibly be so that you can join the network without having any real computer knowledge. As you can see, the account creation process, very straightforward. And all of the stuff over here is very simple to use. We also have things like this where you click it and it gives you information. Now, what we're going to be able to do after the launch of Q apps is make it so that this information can also have videos tied to it and other things, walkthroughs, pictures, all of it, right? So we will not just have, text that you can read. We'll have a how to use the trade portal video that comes up that's published on QDN. The reason we can't do that now is because we're not linking outside to the internet, right? So, and we can only post certain things in certain ways. It's not as simple as it is as it will be after this weekend, right? So we'll be able to put up a Q blog post or host our wiki on top of QDN and link to a video right here that walks you through every aspect of it and so forth. So things are going to be all able to be figured out from just getting into the UI. You download it, it checks to make sure everything else is good. You create your account, you get in here, you'll have, what is this? How do you use this? Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Bam, good, right? We want everything to be right there in front of you, not having to go outside to look in other locations to try to find information and so forth. It needs to be straightforward as possible. And that is what we're going to be getting to after this weekend. With the single installer, is going to make things so simple. So I'm not worried at that point about people having issues with really anything, because we have an amazing community too. So if you do still have some sort of issue, right, you can just come and talk to us. And we have tons of people with tech support backgrounds and so forth that are always available to help with any issue and know a lot about the platform and so forth. So we're looking to be able to allow anyone to take part in this, right? It's not some super techie thing that only techie people can figure out, right? We want everyone to be able to free themselves and take full control of their digital lives, right?
Yeah, and timely as well with the Restrict Act and some things that they're looking to do, and we kind of know where it's going as well. I know for you guys, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, maybe to see new options. It's great to see. I'm sure you're kind of excited to see that there's going to be options, even through potential technocracy tyranny kind of situations. But I know also it can be hard to break a habit. Potentially you're still using Google Chrome or whatever, and I think starting with one thing at a time is the best way. And why not give Qortal a go? It seems like it's up and running and ready to go. And it will only improve from here, like Jason has mentioned. So, excellent. I guess where can people find you and Qortal itself, all the links and everything else?
Yep. So, Qortal is spelled no U. There's no U in Qortal. It's like portal with a backwards P, right? So Qortal. You can go to qortal.org to get information about the project. I can actually I'll put my screen share back on and actually show you this, because I want to show people where these links are, because some people, have issues finding things and so forth. So I'd like to just kind of show you. So yeah, if you just go to Qortal.org, this is the main Qortal internet presence, right? We're going to be able to move all of this stuff to QDN here very soon. You can click join to get to the downloads, and after this weekend it's going to be a lot simpler, because we'll only have the links to the UI up here. Then we'll move the core links down lower and make it so that you only have one installer to get things started. But we do have guides, so if you are on Windows, you can click here to read the guide. It gives you step-by-step instructions on how to install. The links for our Telegram, our Discord, and YouTube channels are up here in the corner. And that's basically it. Like, you can communicate to us inside of the Qortal UI in QChat, right? This is a global chat right here, a Qortal general chat. It's the main chat that you're thrown into when you create an account, because this is not actually a group. It's just global, so anyone can communicate here. You can come in here and message here, or you can, join our Telegram or Discord. It's going to be, that's where all of the people hang out, in those two locations, and QChat. As we get a little further along with QChat, we will have what we call the QChat database and protocol, which will make it so that messages are able to last longer than 24 hours. Right now, QChat messages last 24 hours because they are unconfirmed transactions, so they only last for 24 hours. We are adding the QChat database and protocol very soon after the Q apps launch. which will make it so that QChat is literally a desktop messaging replacement. The messages will be faster, less issues with delays and so forth because of relaying transactions, and you'll be able to choose how long you keep those messages. And even as a new user coming in, if you have your nodes set to keep them longer, then you'll be able to get the history and so forth. So it's going to be literally replacement for desktop messaging systems. As we get further along, we'll have the ability to do things like this we're doing right here with this video call in a decentralized fashion as well, right? So removing the need for all of these centralized services in the middle is the goal. It's actually, happening too. So we are very excited about the launch of Qblog and QTube. This should be able to get people who have been deplatformed from, all of the social media platforms to be able to come over and bring their community to a place where they can access things again, right? So it's pretty exciting. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. It sounds excellent. And it sounds like a lot of work to do as well, a lot of stuff to be done. But, one step at a time, and we'll see some improvements coming in the next few months. And obviously, as I think if you join now, I think it's a great time because you can see the project grow and you can contribute to it as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice one. Thanks again, Jason, for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Going through basically like a webinar there on Qortal, which is brilliant. I actually haven't deep dived into it. I definitely want to make sure we communicate a bit more to get my website all sorted on there. And anyone else out there who has content, definitely reach out to these guys, and they can maybe help you put it onto the Qortal Network.
Yeah, it's going to be really easy once Qblog goes live because
you can
anybody's going to be able to just make posts and put content up really easily. Like you won't have to build a website and publish that, right? And like that's the only way to put stuff on Qortal right now is to make a whole website and publish that. And I have tools that make that really simple, but still, it's not like for the normal user that simple.
Yeah.
Now we'll have an application where you can literally go new post, boom, 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 done. Yeah.
Nice one. Excellent. Sounds good. We'll have all the links to Qortal in the description. Remember to share, like, and subscribe to the channel. Get access to our free newsletter, which we post every month. It's a brand new newsletter, which is packed with incredible content from the team and special guests with information to help you implement into your lives, such as to move away from centralized systems, just like Qortal is building, and step into sovereignty and freedom. Peace and love to you all. Thanks again for listening, and thanks again, Jason.